Good morning to those on the West Coast. Good afternoon to everybody else. Welcome to Beyond the Boundary Lines, fostering diverse talent in land surveying profession. Today's conversation is about more than just awareness. It's about creating an action plan, hopefully. We can do that at the end of these conversations. How do we create an environment that is generally attracts, supports, and advance underrepresented talent within the profession? If we want the profession to stay strong, relevant, and well-staffed, we have to widen who sees the profession, that sees a future in the profession. So before I open it up to the panel, I want to recognize Future Surveyors Foundation and the board. We have a few board members on here who make these kind of conversations possible. The foundation's mission is to create an opportunity, inspiration, and support to develop a skilled and inclusive workforce within the profession. And that matters because our workforce development also depends on it. Anna Rios, founder and president of Future Surveyors Foundation, has helped build programs that increase visibility, connection, and support of underrepresented groups within the profession. And we're grateful for that leadership and for the foundation's commitment to growing the future of the profession. On here is a few current board members, and the current board members are Anna Rios, who's founder and president, Heather Markley is VP, Virginia Weinberg is a founding advisor, and I'm sure Anna calls on her quite often still. Alicia Tabanek, I'm not going to butcher her last name, but she's currently secretary and does an amazing job with running our board meetings currently. Jose is a director, Amanda is a director, Heather Welch Westfall is a director, and myself are a director. So um, that kind of makes up the existing board of the Futures Foundation, Future Surveyors Foundation. I keep messing that up, but I wanted to give Anna just a couple seconds if she wanted to kind of add on to a little bit of that. And I know this particular conversation come from an actual board meeting as well, just about how we can create. Initially, it was how do we create allies within the profession, and that kind of led to this particular conversation of creating, this fostering a diverse profession. So I'll turn it over to Anna really quick to kind of talk about the foundation itself and how long it's been around. And I don't know if you want to wait till the end or if you want to talk about some of the other things for coming up later in the year as well.
I'll do most of it now because I might have to cut out at the end to go get my kids.
Yeah, sounds good.
So, like Trent said, my name is Anna Rios, and the foundation actually started in 2020, which was the year after we hosted our first Women's Surveyors Summit. And ultimately, the Future Surveyors Foundation was designed to help promote and support those underrepresented groups. Um, we I wanted to keep it kind of an open name, so I didn't call it the Women's Surveyors Foundation. I wanted to open it up to all those that felt like they needed some additional support. So Future Surveyors Foundation was the name. I couldn't come up with anything better, so pretty generic, but that's what it is. And we've really tried hard to grow a little bit more each year. It's a completely volunteer-based group. None of us get paid for this. It's a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. So most of these sponsorships and donations are tax deductible. We like to offer that up to the people that support us. The Women's Surveyors Summit has really taken off each year. We've hosted it in different states across the country every year, and we have states committed through past 2030. So we are excited about that, continuing to grow every year and supporting the women in this profession. Today, we're talking more about the allies and how we help those that we see in the profession that may need that additional support, or that might be treated unfairly, and that we witness that and we see that. And how can we step up and try to change the culture surrounding us and surrounding what we're doing? And so I'm really excited about today's panel. If you have any questions or you want to help out or you want to participate, you can always email me, anna.rios@futuresurveyors.org. Our website is futuresurveyors.org. We just continue to grow. Registration is about to open for the Women's Surveyors Summit. And so if you have not attended a Women's Surveyor Summit before, it is, some people call it life-changing. I think it's just totally fulfilling. It fills my cup every year. It continues to drive me and keep me motivated in what I'm doing. And so I find that it happens with a lot of the people that attend. And it's just been really a great atmosphere. It's different than any other surveyors conference out there. And it's just a wonderful event. So if you have not attended a Women's Surveyor Summit, I encourage you to check it out, sign up for it, attend. This year it's in San Diego. And so we're excited to head to California, head to San Diego. It's a beautiful city, and we're looking forward to that. I think that's my spiel. I'm going to let Trent take back over. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out.
What's the date?
Oh, September 17th through the 20th. But if you want
Nice.
to go a day earlier, a day late, you can explore San Diego. I'm taking my family. We're going to the zoo. I'm going to try to get group tickets for anybody else that's interested in taking their family to the zoo. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's great. I will say, helping put together the one this year here or last year in Las Vegas was a great experience, and it was great to be a part of the. I sat back kind of out of the limelight to as much as I could to help support it. But I do I wanted to kind of call on Kent because one of the things was like, how do you how do you feel? What was it? How did Kent how did it get worded? But it was like, how do you feel in the room? And it was like Kent was like, it's super awkward. And I remember Peter going, well, how do you think we feel, as ladies being at a surveying conference, right? And it was because there was only so few, like there was only Kent and I basically in the room, and so it was kind of it flipped the script, and so
Yeah.
it was great to see from that aspect of it. So
Yeah. It's definitely a
yeah,
different perspective when you're one of few in the room.
yes, yes, very much so, and so that's why I love going back to that. I mean, it was funny that PETA calling us out on that, so it was kind of cool. I just want to, yeah, I was going to kind of go through just introductions really quick from a panelist. We have a great panelists, diverse panel as well, and so I'll just go through if Amanda, you want to kind of give a little bit of background on yourself and what what you're doing right now and how it brings it back to the panel.
Yeah, sure, you bet. I'm Amanda Manos. I'm from New Mexico originally. I have a degree in surveying engineering from New Mexico State and a degree in geomatics from the University of Alaska, Anchorage. And so I've spent most of all my career working in the Western United States, New Mexico, Alaska, Washington State, and now Arizona. But we do projects all over the country. I currently own Darling Geomatics in Tucson. But like I said, we do work all over. I have a diverse background. I've worked for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I worked for the DOT in Alaska. I've worked for the BLM. I've worked for several private companies, but and own my own business very at the very beginning of my career. And so it's kind of nice to be back in that element where I can get the people in the room that I want and work with the people I want. And that's always such a privilege to be able to do that. And so expanding our diverse workforce is very important to me. I've worked with Anna a lot. I'm a past president of NMPS, the New Mexico Professional Surveyors, and the National Society of Professional Surveyors. I was fourth out of five. I think we've had five now. So
Hmm.
it's great to be here. Thank you for hosting this, and I look forward to hearing more about what everybody has and to say and thinks about this great topic.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Anna. Kent and Sean, I'll go with Kent first, but Kent and Sean, if everybody probably follows the Geoholics podcast, I asked both of them to be on here. One, because they've had conversations at this point with thousands. We'll say thousands because it's throughout the different shows and things that you guys have done throughout the world at this point. It's great to have your guys' perspective because you had so many conversations with surveyors throughout the world. And so we'll go with Kent's bio really quick.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is a really cool opportunity that I'm honored to be a part of.
Yeah.
And obviously, Sean's the smart one. I'm the better looking one of the two. But we've been doing the Geoholics for just about 7 years. And like Trent said, we've been very fortunate and blessed to talk to surveyors and, just people working in the geomatics community in general, from all over the world. So, I hope we can bring a unique perspective to this conversation. And just to circle back on the Women Surveyors Summit from last year in
Yeah.
Las Vegas. I mean, it was such an amazing experience for me personally. And I left there with, gosh, an entirely different perspective, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
And anybody on this call that hasn't had the opportunity to attend one of the Women's Surveyor Summit, I highly recommend it. It's a tremendous experience.
Yep, absolutely. Mr. Sean?
Kent, what's your real job?
There you go. I love
Oh
it.
yeah, I do have a real job. So I'm a professional land surveyor. I've been working in the survey industry for right around 34 years at this point. And my real job is I am a one of 5 market leaders, surveying geomatics market leaders for David Evans and Associates, and I kind of oversee Arizona and California.
There you go. Good job, Sean.
Thank you. My name's Sean Faber. I'm a co-host of the Geoholics. Like as Kent said, we have had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people all over the world and focused in the geospatial industry. So hopefully we can bring some perspective there, and maybe some of the people we have talked to. Outside of the podcast, I am the managing principal for Alta Environmental and Infrastructure. It's about a 250-person firm located here in Phoenix and Tucson. And I'm the black sheep of this group because I am a civil engineer and not a surveyor. So please don't hold that against me. But I do manage our survey group as well as our civil engineering group and our geotechnical group. So very happy to be here. Very excited. Look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I love it. And then Sandra, she's going to keep us in line because she's coming from the HR perspective, and so she's going to correct us all the time.
No, I'm fine. I had a good test. Hi, everyone. I am Sandra Milanovich. I'm based out of Houston, Texas. And as Trent said, I am part of the human resources team. I'm really just here to, hang out with you guys and answer any questions that will be relevant to, my department, my area of expertise. But I'm very excited that I was invited and get to sit into this interesting topic that y'all are talking about today.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. And then my name is Trent Keenan, and I own a land surveying company in Las Vegas called Diamondback Land Surveying. I started it coming up on 18 years ago, and so I'm trying to bring that perspective as well as trying to create a very diverse environment within my own company. So I bring that perspective. I have 30 years. I started in the profession when I was 19, so I have 30 plus years into the profession. And so hopefully I can add a few things, but mostly moderating, and I will chime in where I can most of the time. But kind of wanted to get to everyone else's perspective. So we'll start with a cliche, right? Let's start by setting the stakes before we talk about creating some solutions. And so we'll start with a couple of questions, just kind of lay some groundwork on, and maybe this, I guess let's see, we'll start with alphabetical order. So we'll start with Amanda. Why is diversity in the land surveying not just a social issue, but a workforce issue?
Yeah, I think everybody knows the so few numbers that we have, the declining numbers of professional land surveyors, and anybody not knowledgeable in this profession. And it's really a high stakes game because of the important role we play in construction and boundary determinations and any infrastructure projects and mining, you name it, oil and gas. Surveyors are involved, and it's a key foundation to the whole United States as a whole. And anybody who's done a little bit of research into the background of where surveyors come from and what our jobs are knows how important this is, to the economy and to protecting businesses and even personal assets. And so I think at that end, it's so obvious to us that are in the profession that we're at a critical juncture to get more people involved. And I definitely think there will be fewer PLSs going into the future, but there needs to be a push to have, a lot still because of the amount of data and stuff that we can gather with smaller crews. And but it's still the oversight of that is so critical to maintaining, great data and continuing to protect the public as a whole, because we have to be aware of the important role we play in the whole ecosystem of civil projects and engineering and design, and again, property rights.
Yeah, exactly. Kent, Sean, either one of you?
Yeah, I would like just to add, Amanda mentioned how people get into this industry. And we have a lot of experience, and just about everybody we talk to, we ask them, how do they become a surveyor? How do they find out about this? And you can chime in, but I would put it maybe 20% of the people we talk to started in or identified this as a career, kind of Amanda's path, went and got their engineering and survey degree, and then went and got that's the rare. That's more
Yeah.
rare than usually it's I fell into this, or I got this job and was introduced to survey tangentially, and then I fell into it and I really liked it. So a lot of geography students and a lot of um, architects. I think Kent started to be an architect and became a surveyor. So we see the majority don't follow a traditional path that other industries and other professions take.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, it's the future of surveying. It depends really on who we bring, into the profession today. And, it's if we want the profession to thrive, I think we really have to expand who we reach and who we, invite into surveying. It's just, bringing fresh perspectives into the talent pipeline is absolutely crucial for the future of surveying, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Sandra, what about from an HR perspective? What do you think?
I mean, from our perspective, it's just doing outreach programs as soon as they hit like high school, educating them and having surveyors on site, educating the students there, and also going to those career fairs,
Yeah.
and bringing those professional surveyors on site with us to answer questions for the students. Starts early on, but for experienced surveyors, I know there's a gap there as well. So.
Yeah, yeah. I just followed up with my article in December, and we're sitting darn near close to between 47 and almost 50% over the age of 61. So we have, like all professions and trades, right? We're coming all up to that cliff, and it's going to come within the next 5 years, and so it's getting here pretty quick. And Amanda kind of talked about it, but we're going to require less professional surveyors, but there's still that responsible charge, right? And so at what point does one professional surveyor have to oversee, 5, 10, 20 people's worth of work and still be within responsible charge? Like you can't continue to kind of push that. So from a surveying perspective, and that's, as we go down these questions, but we also have to understand that not everybody wants to be a licensed surveyor. And so we have to kind of separate our conversations here a little bit, right, from professional and technical side too. So, I think that's good. On that same one, what risks does the profession face if we do not broaden who enters the profession?
One of my favorite points that needs to be made, I think, is the socioeconomic impact of who knows land surveyors? Can you get one? Can you hire one? And
Yeah.
I haven't shared this story a lot, but when I was running my own company in Silver City, I had my uncle. He was kind of a crazy guy, but he always had an interesting group of friends. And he calls me one day and he's like, "Amanda, I've got a friend and she needs a survey. You need to go help her." And so I was like, "Okay, all right, I'll go. I'll go talk to her." And she didn't have a phone. She didn't have those things, so I had to drive out there and talk to her. So I went out there and she's explaining her situation to me. And her and her husband had got divorced, and they had about 30 acres. And in their divorce, she got 2 acres. And however, this was a really small town, and she kept trying to hire a surveyor, but her husband was an attorney and was friends with all the surveyors there, and they wouldn't take her job. So we oftentimes we don't think about that. The block there that comes, if she couldn't get a land survey done, she would have never got her property that she was awarded in their divorce. I mean, legally, she had been awarded this property, but she could not actually obtain it because the surveyors in that town were friends with her husband. She didn't know anybody else. She had economic barriers to hiring people. And I will now never forget when we came out and started the field work. She went out behind her little trailer, dug up a coffee can, and pulled out $100 bills to pay me that her daughter had sent her. And so obviously we didn't take her money, but
That's cool.
the impact that we have just because my uncle hooked me up with her, and because I was more diverse than the gentleman in that county, it's just we can't understate the importance of what we do and how we change lives and those connections that we have, and will expand into those people that don't necessarily have the money or the means or the contacts to get land surveys done.
Yeah.
Well,
What
and I
about from like
think that if as far as risks go for the
yeah,
profession, it's catastrophic if we can't add enough professionals to meet the demand and meet the quality expectations. Eventually, the responsibility will be taken from the profession because we don't have enough professionals in it to operate the way that it should be. And
yeah,
whether it's through a government action or somehow that the industry will take it from us.
right.
And then
Yeah,
it'll snowball, and Kent, I'm sure, can chime in on all the horror stories you get into when there's not a person of professional charge involved, and it kind of creates its own problems, and then there's no one to fix it.
yeah, I was gonna add to that when it comes to the strain on project deliveries, right? So now we're what would typically be maybe 18 to 20 business days is now pushing to 25 to 30 business days, right? Like in that matters from interest rates, loans on
Mhm.
closings, construction loans, those kind of things, right? And so we need, I mean, that's probably the most important part, like you said, having to be able to meet the client's deadlines. So who else wants to add on that one?
Yeah, I just think it just goes along with everything we're talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
Trent, is it Oregon that there's more surveyors going to be retiring over the next X amount of years, or at the rate that surveyors are retiring versus the rate that new surveyors are coming into the profession?
Yeah.
Like, there's not going to be any surveyors in Oregon in whatever 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I mean
That's pretty much most states, but yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about that, and it's hard to wrap my brain
Mhm.
around it. But it's I mean, if we don't broaden who enters the profession, I mean, firms like we're talking about, they're just going to struggle to replace retiring professionals, and that's going to slow innovation, and
Yeah,
and then that's going to limit the profession's long-term sustainability. I mean, we're at the precipice, in my opinion.
we are. Yeah, truly. Like I said, that big cliff within the next 5 years is gonna really hurt us in the next few years. But this kind of goes with the last conversation when we first started. Have you seen moments when someone clearly did not feel like they belonged? And what did that kind of look like within your firm or within, maybe within your department or your those kind of things, right? So mm, I'm sure I mean, it kind of goes with what Kent and I talked about when we went to the summit.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a
yeah,
very sobering moment.
yes, it was.
It was like the opening, I don't know, ceremony or whatever. And Trent and I were like the only males in the room, and it was very uncomfortable. I got to tell you. And it was like, I'm like, Trent, are you uncomfortable? He's like, yeah, I'm like me too. And then, I think it was Peter, like you said, that like, hey, this
Yeah,
is how we feel all the time. And that was a
exactly.
very sobering moment for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love it.
Yeah, Anna and I've kind of talked about this before when she described how she got into serving, as a kind of a receptionist and an admin, and then really
Yeah.
enjoyed the work and got out in the field. And I think those historic roles are still being filled by women, and then they don't get the opportunities. I'm seeing more women and getting into drafting and things like that, but then when they become too good at drafters, even if they say they want to go in the field and want to do those things, it's not happening, because you're too good of a drafter. Or one time I worked for this company in Alaska, and they basically told me I'd never go out in the field because they had to get an extra hotel room, and it was cutting into their costs. And keep in mind, this
Mhm.
was 20 years ago. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but being told that, I mean, who can you imagine as a company owner telling somebody that, no, you will never get to go in the field because of your gender and because we have to buy another hotel room. And it's just, I left.
Mm.
I immediately left. And I think that's what we have to encourage with people when they're at a dead end in their career journey at a certain, juncture, whether it's with the government, whether it's with a private company, whatever. If you're up against that wall and it's not going to happen and you really want to do it, you'll find somebody that'll help you do it,
Yeah.
and cutting those strings is oftentimes difficult, and not giving up. And so, but that's why the Future Surveyors Foundation was started, because of those things that occur too often.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I could add one more thing,
Yeah,
like,
please.
let's face it, if somebody feels like they don't belong, they're going to hesitate to speak up, right? And
Hmm.
then, they're going to feel isolated on the team that they work on. And then ultimately, there's going to be a lack of representation at the leadership level.
Correct. Yep, 100%.
Well,
I was gonna
and
jump
then
in.
you said, Trent, you said the question of have we seen moments where someone felt like they didn't belong? And I guess
Correct.
the regionally for us, I guess I've seen that in our field work 6 months out of the year is darn near brutal as far as working conditions out in the field. So, and I
Hmm.
think we aren't we can do a better job of not necessarily accommodating that, but being aware of what the challenges are. And sometimes field guys that have been doing it for a long time just have adapted to work in 110-degree weather, and
Yeah.
we don't acknowledge that regardless of who they are. That is a struggle to adapt to working in the field, different hours, extreme climates, and there's things that we can do, whether it's whoever they are, to acclimate our staff into field work. And I think sometimes, and definitely in the past, like Amanda's example, it's like, well, we just rather not worry about that than have to deal with it. Well, we're not
Yeah.
going to have that choice anymore. It's either
Yeah.
we can either get the work done or we can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've talked about it the last few years. I feel like, there's going to be a changing of the guards, right?
Mhm.
Over the next few years. And so I feel like we'll get away from some of those practices and things will have to change. But I was going to ask Sandra from an HR standpoint, like anyone coming into your office and having those type of conversations, right? Like, I mean,
No,
you
no,
guys,
definitely.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I was gonna come in whenever everyone was done, but we definitely have some employees that felt isolated. I think some people have been with the company for so long, they're tight knit crews, and if they're newer to the team, they do feel isolated. They ask like, "Hey, I want to move from one crew to another,"
hmm,
and sometimes they end up leaving the organization. That's more on us and how our leadership, um, contributes to the team dynamic. Uh,
yeah. I
That's
was gonna,
mostly because of
I was
the
gonna,
personality clashes, I think. Different beliefs, perhaps. I'm not sure.
yep, yeah. I know we've had some other conversations. We've even had some with on the Geoholics about even religious different beliefs as well, right? Like those kind of things, and so all of those come into play. But and I kind of talked about it in my article as well. But I mean, we have to focus as much on retention with those existing in the profession as much as we spend on recruitment as well, right? Like, and there's such an interesting dynamic currently within the profession. So it's we got to spend as much time working on that as we do the others. So there's a couple of things in the chat as well. So if you guys kind of wanted, Connie, if you speak up on your intent, you might be mischaracterized, which is 100%. Um,
Yeah, and Trent, if
yeah,
I can, I'm
yeah,
looking at
please,
like the names of some of the folks that are on this call, and
yeah,
it's very humbling to me personally that I had the opportunity to speak to a number of the ladies on this call at the Women's Surveyor Summit. And some of the stories that were told, I literally sat there like with tears in my eyes. I mean,
yeah.
it was it was so humbling, it was so sobering, and the stories that are out there will make your head spin.
Yeah, yeah. There's a few of these in the chat. That's great.
Yeah, and we really would like to think we're beyond all this, and lots of people have asked me before, do you think it's changed a lot in the last 30 or 40 years? And getting to spend time with, Rita Lumos
Hmm.
and Wendy Lathrop and some of those people, I point blank asked them, and she said they've told me no, I don't think it's any better. It's just changed. The dynamics have just changed of the harassment and you know what I mean, and those types of things, the ability to do that to people. And it really comes down to just treating people fairly, no matter your ethnicity or your gender.
Yeah.
I make a huge effort to talk to the field crews and talk to the people in the office and, see if they're happy in their roles, see if they want to do something else. And, like I said before, we have a really great drafter and she's female. And, the reluctancy is there to let her out in the field. But I make a continuous effort to get her out as much as we can, and to really expand that for her and get other people in the office to help that out because just because it's inconvenient for us as business owners or managers or, directors doesn't mean that we don't need to take that on and get everybody in a place where they feel like they're succeeding and their political their um, their their employment agendas and their goals are being met.
Yeah. I also like Connie's question. Why is it there an automatic assumption that women can't handle the outdoors, right? So, I mean, that could be a whole hour conversation by itself. But
Hey, Trent,
Shauna,
real quick, do you
yeah,
think some of these perspectives
yeah,
are generational?
yes,
You know what I mean? You've
I
got
I
the
do.
older generation of surveyor and the youngest generation of surveyor, and I
Hmm.
think a lot of these perspectives, are just, I don't want to say they're dated because they definitely still exist, but I think as a lot of the older generation starts to retire, I think there's improvement in some of these things happening just, you know, naturally, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was going to say there's currently 5 generations in the workforce, right? So from silent to boomers to X to
Hmm.
millennials, those kind of things. And so there's such a diverse, especially in the
Hmm.
surveying profession, it's probably one of the most diverse, I would think, when it
Yeah,
comes to
I
yeah.
like,
think as far
I
as
should say I hope it's improving. How about that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. Go for it, Anna.
I think it's improving.
Yeah.
And I do think that it was more prevalent in previous generations, but there is still some of that in some of the younger generations. I think most of the younger generation is more accepting and more aware and and more welcoming
Yeah.
for women in this profession and for different backgrounds in this profession. But I do think there's still I don't necessarily think that it's completely generational. I think it was more prevalent in previous generations. I think there's still some of that around. But also, I wanted to just kind of say, with kind of backtracking a little bit to what we were talking about a minute ago, as far as people being in the profession, a lot of us when we're new to a job, we're trying to prove ourselves, right? And so we're trying to put ourselves, in this role, and we're trying to make sure that we can step up and do everything that we're asked to do. And sometimes that comes with negative situations because we don't either know to ask for help, or we don't want to ask for help, or we're scared to ask for help, or we're intimidated to ask for help for whatever reason. And so checking in and keeping that open communication is really good for leaders in this profession to be aware of and to be thoughtful of, especially for the new people coming into this profession, because we want to keep them here. If we can get them into the profession, we want to keep them here. And
Yeah.
so one of the ways to keep them here is to really just keep that open communication and really check in and just, say, hey, how's it going? Is there anything can I answer any questions for you? How's this going? And just keeping that open communication is one of the ways that we can really be an ally or support to the people coming into this profession, regardless of the background.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. Just to keep up with the chat really quick, Connie, there's a lot more laws nowadays, which is that definitely helps with where we're at today. Um, and then what was the other one? Yeah, mo like you said, mostly everyone on here is females. How do we get more males? And that was kind of what we were talking about at the beginning of this was how we get the allies part of this. And so hopefully we'll get some traction on this. But um, Anna kind of led right into the next one, which was understanding barriers. So and it kind of leads into that. The very next question is awareness the biggest issue, or access? And where do firms unintentionally narrow the pipeline, right? By from, I would say, from resume readings or certain things like that, right? Like how are we skipping over some of these underrepresented people? But I will say, just from my perspective, from a business owner perspective over the last 18 years and getting resumes, um, I mean, it doesn't matter what resume I get. I mean, if I have a position that's open, and I also have 10 under the age of 30, so we've brought in a lot with zero experience. But when I'm looking for an experienced person, to me, it doesn't matter. Uh, Somebody's got a horn honking. I don't know where'd that go. It doesn't matter, what the name on the resume is. Does it meet the qualifications that I'm looking for? So, I will say from my perspective, we don't unintentionally narrow the pipeline, but I'm sure there's certain firms going back to what we talked about just a second ago, the generational aspect of it, right? So is awareness the biggest issue or is it access, those kind of things? So who wants to chime in on that one?
Well, I'm curious, Trent, and I guess I'm kind of in a similar boat from you because I can,
Yeah.
I can go in. I was actually just trying to see what of let's say a survey assistant or a crew chief job posting.
Yeah.
How many of those are males? And from what I can tell, I'm looking hard to find a female applying to a survey crew chief or a survey assistant position. And I guess the good question is, why is that? And is it something that we're presenting in the job posting that is dissuading more people from applying? I guess I don't know what we're missing because yeah, the same thing for you. If it meets the experience or any kind of qualifications, like we're bringing that person in.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think, awareness or access, I mean, they're like one and two, right? And both matter, obviously. I mean, awareness introduces the career of land surveying in this case, but access to, education or internships or mentorship opportunities, really determines whether a person is going to pursue it, right? And like, we all know about Get Kids into Survey. I'm a fan of it, but it's great for like little kids, but there's really nothing after that, and I know that Trent, you've been very, very active, probably as active as anybody promoting the career of surveying. And one of the things you did is you attended, I don't know if it was like a state or a national, like guidance counselors conference. And I like, that's huge, right? This is focusing on awareness, of course, but if you can get in front of the guidance counselors and tell them about surveying and just, geospatial in general, I think that is such a targeted audience that we're missing for the most part.
One of the things I got to do this spring too was participate in the SheTech booth here at the University of Arizona, and I'd never heard of them before, but it is a national program, and where they bring in ninth to 12th graders in, and they're all girls, and we had the opportunity to speak to 300 of them, and Southern Arizona, like Southern New Mexico, is pretty diverse, and so it was so neat to see who was interested in it and who really wanted more information and those types of things. Because if we think about how people learned about surveying, there's a number of us and people who learned about it from their father or their uncle and became a surveyor that way. And if you're lacking women that don't automatically tell their children and their nieces and their nephews, it's not going to get diverse without that. And so the more we have, the better it'll get, and the more inclusive and the more comfortable it'll feel for the minorities and the women out there, because it's hard to do when you don't see somebody else doing it, and it's hard to do when you're the only female at a company. And or even at a huge crew. I mean, when I worked for the BLM in Alaska, there was 30 of us and there was 2 women. And kind of fun and fortunate, we got assigned on the same boat, and we were working with the same gentleman. But it was, I guess, if you don't have the right personality to go through and be resilient through those things, it's very difficult for people, and the seeing it done by somebody else is huge and effective to know that you can do it yourself too.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of leads into the next question. How visible is the land surveying profession in the minority communities today? And why is the profession struggling to tell its story in those underrepresented areas? That's a big one.
I still think it's because of the friends and family factor. I mean, if you don't have friends and family that are diverse in nature and we're not telling each other about this, it's not anything I think people are intentionally hiding or not trying to do. I intentionally try and talk to people that don't look like me and don't and aren't from my same neighborhood and those kinds of things. But I had a gentleman from Massachusetts tell me, there's no Hispanics in my town, period. And it makes me uncomfortable to try and think about how to talk to and relate to those people because I really don't want to offend them, and that's one thing, but we just have to jump in the water and try. You know what I mean? So many of us are so forgiving, and it's not about that. But there's a lot of pressure put on people to not not make anybody feel bad. But I still think the effort needs to be made by all of us just to talk about what we do. If we just talk about what we do when people ask, it goes so far.
Yeah, it's good.
I can agree to
Well,
that. My background is coming from a Hispanic background. I didn't know about surveying until I started working for the company that I work for today. And it took me a while to even understand what surveying was. To then later, obviously working with the people here, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting because a lot of the people in my community in those areas all we know was pretty much construction. I mean, it's just easy to get in there, easy to do the job. It's pretty self-explanatory, and then, go home and call it a day. So I think there's definitely a lack of knowledge in the community that, at least here in Houston, that surveying does exist. So
Yeah.
I think
well,
like
and to
probably
Sandra's
the
point too,
easiest
go ahead.
thing to do. Oh, sorry.
Nope.
Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. One of the things that actually Amanda and I did a couple of years ago when we worked at the same organization that's just so small to include a group is we did our flyers for hiring double-sided, one side English, one side Spanish. So
Hmm.
it's just the tiniest thing, right? But it made such a big difference, especially going to middle schools. I work in talent acquisition, so I do that all day. Going to middle schools and high schools, a lot of these parents want to know what their kids are getting into, and some may not even speak English. So it was really
Yeah.
simple for us, especially in Texas, where we do have a big Spanish speaking community, that it was just such a simple change. And it really made all the difference in the world because now these kids are more comfortable coming to mom and dad, telling them, look at what I learned today. Surveying is a great
Yeah.
pathway. You can start just straight out of high school in the field and then decide if you like it. And that's the way that my company now has pushed it. We were just at a career fair, a high school career fair, where they actually have surveying classes, but not a lot of these kids knew that that was available in their own school. So it was really cool to like surprise them and give them the information of who they need to contact and, make those connections. And it was really nice to see a lot of those kids who were minorities like understand, wow, I can do this straight out of high school. I can try it out, see if I like it. And if they do, I mean, a lot of firms give tuition reimbursement, and that was really important for us to let them know there is a pathway. No matter where you are, we're going to give you that opportunity to succeed in this career.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before you jump in there, one of the things I forgot to mention as part of my bio is I'm also Workforce Development Committee Chair for NSPS, so from the National Workforce Development side. But one of the things we did was work with Seneca Holland, and that was one of her main requests was to get the be a surveyor and NCWS material in both Spanish and English, right? And so that has now been done, and we did that last year. And so yeah, again, going with those conversations, right? Like it's very important. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad you
yeah,
brought that up.
a very powerful comment in the
Yeah,
chat, from Arnold Haynes.
yeah,
Kudos to Arnold for posting this. But he says, as a black man, I will say that there is little to no visibility in minority communities. We have to be
right.
intentional about reaching out to those communities. He says that he will be making an effort to get the word out about our profession, and that's what it takes. It's a grassroots
It is.
effort, to be honest with you. There's not an easy button, unfortunately, for us.
Mhm.
And comments like that, efforts like that are going to make a difference.
Yeah. And along those lines, when you hire one, you end up opening the door to many, and
Absolutely.
we had one black gentleman that works at our company, and now we have two because he told his friend, and
Yeah.
that's just the way it works. And it works similarly to me with veterans. I hired one, and then now there's a fifth. Actually, a quarter of our company is veterans, and it's just because word of mouth. And you know what? I know somebody that's good to fill this role, and so that's the best way to get people, and I love that tactic.
Yep. And Connie's put in there a few times in the chat about basically when it comes to pronouns, when it comes to job postings and those kind of things as well. So it's like you said, very important, Connie. Yep. I love that.
And I was
And
just
next,
going to add real
yeah,
quick
please,
before you
Sean.
wrap up
Yeah.
the tendency that we found ourselves in is recruiting to the local university job fair only, and we're really limiting our pool of people. And from a socioeconomic standpoint, we're really only talking to the people that can afford to go to college. And that's where we found that we're cutting ourselves off, and they're trying to look at more high school job fairs and expanding that. Because as a civil engineering firm, that's the traditional playbook, right? You go to the local university, you go to their job fair, and it's even dialed into the engineering school at the local university. And that's probably one of the least diverse schools at the school. And that's where we're putting up our booth and saying, okay, well, that pool already is going to be very limited. And we're kind of starting off on the wrong foot traditionally. So it's about going to other areas and different parts of the community that are not in that traditional model.
And El Paso's seen major successes in that by going into the high schools. And Texas has done a wonderful job of that, actually taking training in the high schools that goes into a community college credits that then could go, beyond to New Mexico State. But the community colleges, I can't say enough good work goes on by community colleges, and in particular in Tucson, Pima Community College that has a surveying and drafting program, And so many of those girls, when I mentioned Pima Community College, they were like, oh, I could go to the community college. And it's like, that just opens their mind because, the cost differential between the University of Arizona and Pima Community College opens access to so many more people.
Yeah. And to take it even one step further, I mean, I don't want to get too far off track here, but AI, right, is going to replace a lot of jobs, unfortunately. It's never going to replace the trades, right? And I'm not saying that surveying is a trade, but arguably we can have that conversation on another call. But but the thing is, it's like there are so many good jobs in surveying that do not require a college degree, and it's just not talked about enough, right?
Right. Yeah, I when I go into high school outreach fairs and stuff like that, I talk about multiple paths. And I mean, we have very successful survey techs that have been 30, 40-year chiefs and make a great wage every day, right? Like, and they never wanted to do any more than that. They didn't want the responsibility more than just being a chief. And so there's great money to be made within the profession, no matter which side you're on, professional or technical side, right? So
and some of those people you just mentioned are making more than kids coming out of college.
100%. Yep. There's a couple more good questions, but I'll how can small firms, because everybody knows I talk about the data all the time, but 85% of the surveying firms in the United States are 9 or 10 employees or less, and another 60% are less than 5. And so how can small firms create growth pathways without a large HR department? So that's a loaded question, but thoughts? Maybe Sandra, what do you think? We'll start with from an HR perspective. How can we do that? Because usually it's one LS, probably one CAD tech in the office drafting everything, and then 2 guys in the field, right? Like that's probably the bulk of the surveying firms within the United States. Most people on this call are working for larger firms, would be my guess, which we all have the time, which is why we're on these calls. When I go to conferences, I ask for a raise of hand of people who work for firms less than 5, and there's never any hands. Work for less than 10, there's maybe 1 or 2, and then everybody who works for 15, 20, 50 person firms, that's when they raise their hands because they all have the time to be able to go there, but small firms don't. And so it leads into lots of conversations, right? Small firms have lots of barriers.
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's all about passion, right? Like
it is.
It all has to come down with like the want and need to, and acknowledging how important it is. So for those small firms, I hope they have a champion on there that's willing to do it. So that's all you need, one person.
Yeah.
And recruiting is hard enough right now for everybody, large firm, small firm, whatever. But the important thing is, once you have a new hire, developing that talent is how the profession is going to grow. And even a small firm can make a huge impact there. I'm sure we're going to talk about mentorship at some point, but offering some sort of mentorship program, cross training as much as possible, just clear communication. I think about an individual's career path is so key when it comes to this.
Yeah. And that goes right in line with what just Chen just or Chen what Jen just put in the chat. But I had no idea that I could get into the surveying without a college degree. State societies listed nothing but colleges, and didn't have any suggestions on how to go forward without considering college. So, um, to your point, Kent, right? Like it's there's so many opportunities in so many different ways into the profession. So,
I would say what is the thoughts around someone that's already established, they have an education, but they're not having, they have to provide for their families, etc., but they're wanting to do a career change into surveying. That entry point, but obviously wage matters. What does
yeah.
that look like for someone that is no experience but is an adult professional, not necessarily in the surveying field?
Yeah, that's I can bet you Sean and Kent have had hundreds of conversations when it comes to that. And I would say it's on and I talked about this yesterday. I had a workforce development committee yesterday, but we kind of went down the same path of we're doing so much outreach, but we need companies to be able to willing to hire people, right? And with that comes a respectable wage. And like you said, like when we go to the and maybe Connie can even say, like when we go to these national counselors conferences or even state society or state counselors associations, they're saying, and we talk about the need for professionals and people to get in the profession. They're really interested in a career change at that point. And because they already have a 4-year degree and they can meet some of the requirements and then maybe just go get a few more credit hours, like they're really interested in doing that. But it's up to that business owner to take a chance and then pay them a fair wage that they can't go from making, as a teacher's wage, $75,000 a year to, you know, entry level at $12 to $15 an hour. They're never going to change the profession, right? So it's on a business owner to be able to. I talked about it yesterday, and I talk about it in my business all the time. Business presentations, we have to sacrifice profit for succession planning, right, within the profession. So, but I open it
That's
up. I open it up to
scary
everybody else.
phrase there, Trent. That is a
Yeah.
scary phrase.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, when you work for larger firms and bean counters.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's hard. It's hard, but uh
Thinking outside the box about where we can
yeah,
reach out to people that are diverse. Um,
please.
I mean, just thinking outside, like what kind of conferences that might be a Hispanic conference of some sort that
Hmm.
your state society can go set up a booth. And does your state society have PR campaign brochures that have it in English and in Spanish for those people that don't know English? I mean, there's different things that we can kind of tackle in those locations, and just reaching out to the different places that we might not go to, like we haven't been to before. One of the questions I asked at that Young Surveyor Network meeting, whenever I was inspired for the Women's Surveyor Summit, was what have we done so far, so that we don't continue to repeat the same thing expecting different results. What have we done so far to try to attract young surveyors into this profession and diverse people into this profession? What has been done so far, and what can we do? Just there, whenever I asked that question, I basically was told, well, we're passing the torch to you as young surveyors. And I thought, well, that's not really an answer.
Yeah.
So stepping outside of our comfort zone and stepping into places that we might not have gone before, going to lower socioeconomic areas or colleges or high schools or even elementary schools and middle schools, and getting that in front of them early on, to where they maybe they don't think about it, but their parents do. Maybe the kids go home and they say, oh, I met a surveyor today. Well, what's surveying? And then their kid can say, oh, this is a cool thing where they make maps and collect this information, and they use these scanning things and they use drones and whatnot. So I think stepping outside of our comfort zone, going into locations that we might not have thought of before, can help with that diversifying and creating that visibility.
Yeah. I love that. Anybody else want to add to that? Or move to the next question? How about we'll start with Sandra and then maybe Sean can chime in a little bit too. But what makes a candidate experience and onboarding feel welcoming into the profession or into your company or that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty diverse in how we hire people, like from surveyors, engineers. Um, and so we all treat them all the same. They all get a nice little welcome box. They all get the same communication. We understand that some surveyors need a little bit more phone calls. They don't really check their emails all day. So
Mhm.
we're open and willing to make sure that they have everything they need for their first day, partnering with the managers, that they're attending the benefits information. So very intentional about knowing our audiences. So I think that's what we do here at our firm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would add that I mean, obviously, especially Sandra would agree, like that onboarding process is critical on establishing company culture. And one thing that we've added to that is because I think Amanda said earlier that it helps to see somebody in the role of doing something that, okay, that it actually exists. And we've got a fairly I'm proud of. We have a fairly diverse workforce across all engineers and surveyors. So one thing we do is make sure we take new people around to the office and introduce them to everybody and what they do and how they interact with the group. So it isn't as siloed. And our
Yeah.
and in different areas, we have an environmental group, and so we try to do the best we can to introduce them across to everybody in the company and not just to the survey field team, so they're not so siloed. And there are the one female in the group, like, oh, okay, well, there's another 40 or whatever percent of
Yeah.
this organization is females, and they're all great professionals, and they need to see that in action and not just be told it.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I love that.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do, Sean, is get out with
Yeah.
the field crews too, because they know I was a surveyor and they know I do those things, but they until they see that and see somebody in the field, even the younger generation sometimes can't wrap their minds around that, women actually do this. And so, especially in companies
Sure.
where there are no women. I saw that with a company out of Montana. They sent when I was with the Corps of Engineers, they were our contractor and they sent the first female out with them. And even I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great, but their internal employees couldn't believe it either. So
Right.
it's just crazy to me, but we all fall in those traps. I've done it before too. I look at people and I like, no way, that's not what you do. And it's just the lady that owns the trash company here in Tucson. She's young and she's really beautiful, and I was just like, no way, are you running that trash company? And she's like, well, my family's owned it for years, and I'm like, well, it just doesn't. It does the math doesn't math to me. But we all got to keep that in mind that just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not occurring.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was joking before I hopped on here. Our the person that runs our survey department in Tucson, and it runs the largest survey department in Tucson, I would say, is a Hispanic female, and she's awesome. And one of our owners is like, "Well, I think Trent invited the wrong person to this panel because we have a we have a rare
Yes.
a unicorn, so to speak."
Yeah. Sorry,
And we
Dan.
do we try to encourage that. It's like, no, there is different avenues, and there's different people that can fill these roles, and especially leadership roles is a big thing for us. And having
Yeah.
having a diverse leadership group is one of our core values of what we establish.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think and Patricia's amazing. But I think, and Amanda and I have chatted, and we've already done it with a couple of other companies, but cross training with other companies is
Mm,
I think something that we're missing within the profession as well. But Amanda asked if we would help one of her CAD techs, and was going to send her up. We've done it with another firm where I paid. He took a week's vacation, so the company, he took his own personal vacation. He came out. I put him up in a hotel room and a rent a car and those kind of things, and he cross-trained with our field staff and office staff, and so he was able to get different perspectives from both sides. But I think going back to your point, maybe even with Patricia being down locally in Tucson, like it's another great avenue for Amanda's CAD tech that she wants to really kind of wrap wrap her head around the profession as well. Like I think there's a great value in cross pollination between companies.
oh,
And
sure.
I think there's that we're getting rid of that barrier slowly, slowly, slowly. But of trying to steal, poach other employees, right? I think we're getting those barriers are slowly starting to move around, and that was always the fear, right? Like none of the techs would go to chapter meetings because the fear of somebody stealing their staff and those kind of things. And I think we're again as we roll through the progression and the older generation starts to retire off, those barriers will start to come down, and that is one of the barriers. So I think that cross training is a great thing that we could really push with the profession to get other perspectives within the for that company and for that employee. So
Yeah, and thanks for being willing to do that, Trent.
oh, of
You're
course,
always great and open to
heck
those
yeah,
sorts of things, you know. It's good to have people in the profession that open their doors to, you know,
yeah,
help people. So especially with CAD techs, because they're so hard to come by. You know,
yeah,
you can't find them, you can't train them. So it's really neat to see.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. One thing I want to add about going back to
Yep.
onboarding, one suggestion might be is to have like an onboarding buddy for that person. You know, team them up with somebody that looks like them, talks like them, whatever, and it really makes a difference for an effective transition.
That
Mhm.
led perfectly into the next question. What mistakes do companies make when they try to mentor underrepresented talent, Mr. Kent? See, it led perfectly into that. So thoughts on that? Thoughts on that particular one? Like you said, pairing them up with the wrong person sometimes, right? Or even Sandra talked about it, personality conflicts, right? Like those, you get them involved with the wrong person that doesn't match, um,
Mhm.
political views or any of those kind of things, right? Like it can make them leave a company or it can
Yeah.
even make them leave in the profession. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I think this goes back to mentorship. It's
yep,
something we talk about on the show. It's seemingly every episode at some point. And really having an engaging mentorship program is so effective, right? And mentorship is a two-way street, right? I mean, there's many times that you team up a couple people, in a mentor-mentee relationship, and it just doesn't work for a variety of reasons. A number of what you just mentioned, Trent. So it might take a little jacking around, right? But having a structured mentorship program within your company is so important.
You know, and one
yeah,
of the things too is the company culture as well, because you know, I've even
yeah,
had trouble with my own field crews that when you start asking questions, they feel like they all have to have each other's back and they can't talk about what goes on in the field. You know, what happens in the field stays in the field. But changing that and being like, no, these things are important because maybe people don't know better. Maybe they aren't aware of policies. Maybe they just don't know better. And it's the good for the overall company that we can start talking about these things and improving employee conduct and those types of things. But as long as the culture has been that way in surveying forever, is that you don't throw your buddy under the bus. You know what I mean? And you just don't talk about those things. And so getting communication and the culture set up differently where that's not the case, I think is going to be key to our successes too.
and that kind of goes with what Heather Welch just put in the chat. How do we talk about hazing in the profession? It's still a real problem. It's getting better, but there's that aspect of, you know, it's almost, I was browbeat coming in and I need to browbeat you and right. And
Hmm.
it just kind of that trickle down effect. And so,
Mm.
yeah, how does that get eliminated?
Well, through good mentoring, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you were whatever, browbeaten, and that's what right? So
Yeah.
you don't know any different. Um, but I think it goes back to mentoring for sure. But as far as hazing goes, social media is horrible for that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just not hazing that happens at work,
Yeah.
with people talking. It goes so far beyond that now.
Yep.
When I
And
think
a lot of
talking
companies
about it,
monitor that stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think talking about it is as a group. I think somebody mentioned before about, you know, not feeling either empowered or have the ability to bring up issues. And I think it's the responsibility of of the leadership team that steps in and says, we're going to talk about this. And the working in the field is tough, and that's okay. And that expectation of, like you said, Trent, if I had to get beat up in the field for a couple years before I was accepted, that's not that's not
Yeah.
going to be a working culture anymore. And
No.
we can talk about it and say, all right, well, let's talk about what the issues are. And it's okay if it's a struggle, and here's what we can do to fix it, and kind of changing that dynamic where it's and creating a place where, and like Kent said, having that mentor so you can actually bounce things off of somebody and how to deal with it, and changing the expectations of the field crews and the industry in general. Like, it's okay to struggle and have issues and work through them.
Yeah, that's great. Christy, Eshy, you talked about QK connectors. Will you unmute? Can you talk about that? Are you in the middle of something?
No. Yeah, QK is just the company I work for.
Yep.
So other than, again, we just team and more senior. It's pretty much a mentor-mentee relationship, but I mean, it is more, we just don't call it that. It's just the QK connector. So again, you
Yeah.
have someone that kind of takes an older, or someone that's been in the company a little bit longer, takes the new person under their wing and just make sure that they're involved and they know that they can reach out to you anytime for anything. And so, yeah, that's all I was.
Is there any kind of pairings? Like, how does, or is it kind of, it's not, wouldn't be next in line, but I mean, how does that work?
That actually comes through our HR, and then
Yeah.
maybe the department managers. They're like, okay, who would be a good connector for this person?
Yeah.
And so it could be female to female. It could be minority to minority, or female to minority. It doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I kind of had a similar issue this week with actually one of my staff, and it's funny enough that we kind of talk about this, but we have a young high school student. She's getting a high school credit for missing school this week to come job shadow with a career or a company within a career that she's interested in. So we brought her in, and we have a young CAD tech, and I'm like, hey, I wasn't in at the office at the time, but so I had my daughter say, hey, go hook him up with so and so, and let him kind of shadow this particular person. And he's young, and his response was, well, you're probably just going to sit in silence because I'm super busy right now, and so all you're going to do is watch over my shoulder, right? Like, and so I was kind of frustrated by that, and so of course I had to have that conversation. But it's like, we're bringing people in. I brought you in with zero experience. You need to reciprocate, right? And so that goes back to creating that culture, right? And and creating that environment. And I talk about it in some of my other presentations, but our staff is a product of our environment, which is whatever your leadership views are is what your employees and your staff are going to reciprocate, right? Sometimes. And so that one did not meet our my leadership school skills or and those kind of things. So it's interesting. But anybody want to kind of unmute and chime in a little bit? There's been a lot going on in the chat, but maybe it's a good time. We're an hour in already, and somebody wants to kind of add some personal thoughts to some of the conversations we've already had. I know some of you are doing a great job with it already, but I'd like to give some of you an opportunity to chime in.
y'all were just talking about hazing and the men, and I mean, I did not personally experience that when I started out in the field, and it was all guys, and I didn't see it, and I'm still not seeing it. So maybe I'm just lucky.
Yeah. Well, and how many, I guess, company culture is one, right? And then maybe, did you ever see it in, I don't know how many companies you've possibly worked for, but did you ever see it in any company, right?
Not many. This is my second, really, maybe.
Okay. So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I started out in the field, out in the refineries. In Louisiana. So, yeah,
that would have been a perfect breeding place for that, right?
It was, and again, I guess we just had the good old boys were really good. I don't know.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that is awesome.
Hey, Trent, Connie posted something in the chat. Men hazing each other in surveying is the norm, right? So this is just parallels what we're talking about. Because you look at some of these Facebook pages, for surveying and that type thing, and it's horrible. It is absolutely horrible.
Yep.
I will say that I wasn't hazed at all at one place. But I was also like put in bubble wrap. Like they wouldn't let me do anything because I was a girl. So I almost got to the point I'm like, hey, why am I not getting hazed? That's a horrible way to do it. But again, I was the outsider and I wasn't treated like one of them. So that became an issue as well, because now I'm not part of the team. It's just it double-edged, right? So you're either part of it and you get in on the jokes and camaraderie, or you're outside of it and you're protected and you don't learn and you don't become a good surveyor. It's hard. I need to balance.
Caitlin makes a great point in the chat. Just because the things aren't happening face to face doesn't mean they're not happening online, and people still aren't, saying things and spreading rumors about people, and just the untruth of what goes on online. And AI guy that works down here at the University of Arizona, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, because he said as we go into the future with AI, we're not going to believe anything unless we see it for ourselves anymore, because there's so much that's not real out there. And that's gonna be a crazy thing in surveying as well. You know what I mean? How are we going to verify these things and do these things correctly with all the garbage that we're going to be inundated with? And so hopefully will be even more important than ever. But like Sean said, that's a slippery slope when the work still needs to be done and there's so few of us.
Yeah, I'd say there's maybe 1% of some good nuggets within the Facebook groups, but the rest of it is it's so frustrating.
And I think both Caitlin and Kent are making great points here, because one of the things one of the things that we are responsible as surveyors for is the look of our profession. And when we go out there and we're posting specifically the finds of the day, and they're things that don't need to be posted on the internet, much less who cares, like people find that stuff all the time. Who cares? Like nobody wants to see that. And you're making our profession look bad. Like who wants to be involved with something like that? Who wants to be involved with immature children that are posting ridiculous stuff on Facebook every time they find it? Get back to work. Don't you have a corner to find? Like,
exactly.
So it's not a good look for our profession. And when people are just coming into the profession and they see that garbage, then they're like, well, what do I really want to associate with this profession? And that can turn people away quick. And it's just
I used to moderate one of those groups for a couple of years.
You did,
and I ended up resigning because the owners of that group explicitly did not want to tone down and have a more professional presence in a group. And honestly, I would still like to see associations or somebody come together and create some consequences for these guys, because the illustration of the profession, as all of you have said, it's very negative. I think one of the things that they finally did is they changed that group from public to private. So not everybody can see it. It's a little harder for the clients to see that group. They've recently asked me to come back to the group and to moderate, but I said no. You guys had 2 years worth of chances, so yeah.
To your point, Connie, I got asked to just within the last couple of weeks to moderate one, and I'm like, no, thank you. I'm not. I don't have that much time to begin with, but I am certainly not getting involved with that kind of stuff.
Hey, so it's me. I'm the one. It's Heather. I brought up the other Heather. I brought up the thing about the hazing, and I think it's important to understand that the hazing part of it a lot of times goes towards communication styles, and that pops up not just between guys, but between genders, and but between races, and the way that people interact and form those bonds through teasing, can be really aggressive, for lack of a better word. And I think that, like, I had experiences when I first started going to work with a field crew that had to get the porn out of the van before they would let me in. And I just was like, hey guys, thanks for taking it out of the van, but why was it there in the first place? Why was it there in the first place? So having that, and knowing how people respond and how people get angry and how people can handle personalities and all that stuff can be extra challenging when you factor in different regional backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and that kind of all goes into that. How do we create this community in surveying that's inclusive, but we have to we can't do it without talking about some of those just kind of built-in obstacles and systemic obstacles that we have that people don't automatically or initially recognize, like the difference between the way Southerners and Northerners pick on each other if somebody moves across the country, or the way that, people talk to each other or whatever. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think for the most part that all of us that are in this group love, are enjoying and doing well in surveying and appreciating the fact that we do have allies, whatever they look like. And there's been a lot of comments in the chat about how do we get more people. And I think that we get more people exactly how we started with this, by having this conversation and then including more people in the next conversation and getting a larger group in the next conversation. And so thanks for everybody for taking the time out to be a part of this conversation and to be so visible and visible advocates, not just for the profession, but for the people and individuals that make up the profession.
Yeah, I love that. The next section is outreach, hiring, outreach and hiring and those kind of things. So I'll go through just a couple questions from here because there was quite a few in here as well. But how can firms build relationships? And this is probably good one for you in Texas. How can firms build relationships with high schools, trade programs, and colleges serving minority populations? So I would think, obviously Texas is the forefront of everything happening in that particular field. And so I know I've had lots of conversations with Seneca and how I can bring it to our school districts and those kind of things. But yeah.
I think like what you just said there, making that connection, Seneca is just a fantastic point of contact for stuff like this. I know for us, it's just about showing up. Whatever she needs, we're going to be there to support. So for instance, they have the Skills USA surveying competition coming up in Corpus. We're going to be there just to volunteer our time, just to help. And that's really what it's all about, right? Getting in front of the kids, knowing that there is this big support system. No matter what firm they go to, they're going to be supported. So that's one of the big things that we're doing as far as outreach. And then also talking about the Skills USA competition, talking about TJC, Tyler Junior College, all of these different colleges who have that pathway, and then bring in your people with you. So what we're planning on doing is bringing a wide variety of people. We have someone who's licensed that's going to be out there helping. We have somebody who is in a professional position, corporate level, who isn't licensed, who's also going to be helping. So we can talk about his career pathway and what he's been doing for the past 25 years in the field. So it's just having a wide breadth of people to show them all the different, positions within this industry, and just showing up. That's really what it's all about. Just show up.
Yeah, I love that. Kent, I know you had a conversation recently, just a couple of weeks ago, and it's probably not out yet, right? About one of the ladies from Corpus Christi as well. And it kind of falls in line with the same question. So maybe you can add a little insight to that, you or Sean.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I was trying to think of who did
Was
you
it Shelby?
Yes, Shelby. Yeah. Wasn't it Shelby?
Oh,
You just
at
had on a
the
couple weeks ago?
Conrad Blucher Institute.
For L&D,
Yeah.
Shelby. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Shelby Sharp, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And so same conversations you would have just had. Yeah, Conrad is part of Texas Corpus Christi. Yep, that's where Seneca's at as well. So,
Oh, gotcha.
yeah.
Well,
So I was
one of the things we talked about a lot during that conversation was just, supporting STEM programs, right? There are so many STEM programs at every level of education at this point, and really making that a focus to get involved with STEM across the board, will make a huge difference.
Yeah. We just chatted yesterday on workforce, and because there's the Scout Jamboree is coming up this year, and it happens like every other year.
That's a good one.
And there's obviously a big push to go back to Boy Scouts. And one of the conversations we had yesterday, and it hasn't been that many years since it went to Scouts, but there is over 6,000 female Eagle Scouts currently. I'm like, there's not even 6,000 female licensed surveyors probably in the world, let alone the United States, right? So I thought that was an amazing stat that we talked about yesterday.
That's
like,
crazy.
Yeah, you can't even fathom. Like, can we get just a few of the female Eagle Scouts to come into a STEM career or the surveying profession, those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Well, we did another stat that we had was the prior year, so it would have been 2024 out of the Jamboree. I don't know the total awards of the Surveying Merit Badge, but out of that, I believe it was 219 merit badges were awarded to females. And so we're actually, Seneca asked if we could get a list of those that got awarded in 2024 for that Surveying Merit Badge, and how can we get the list and their contact information so we can follow up with them, right, from a career standpoint. So so those are very impressive numbers, and I feel like, the female in STEM, and there's so much push when it comes to STEM careers at this point. So I think we can start making some bigger strides in those conversations. But those were some amazing stats that we talked about yesterday. So yeah.
And
Go ahead.
Christy just pointed something posted something about preaching to the choir,
I
and how
know.
we get outside the choir. And that's the thing. How do we do that?
I don't
I
know.
don't know, because it's the male factor that, we have to hold ourselves accountable. I just got a post from somebody who'd come and visited the office, and somebody made a comment on it that he was single and he'd like to hook up with a pretty lady, and all this just craziness on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and I don't know how we stop that behavior unless we learn to tell each other it's wrong, and that's what's really hard, is to step outside of our comfort zone, and and police and mentor one another, and be like, dude, that's not all right. You got to stop doing these things. But I really don't know, Christy. I'd be
Yeah.
interested to see what everybody else has to say.
And it goes back to that same conversation that I had when I go to my conferences. Like, the smaller firms are not there. We're preaching to the choir because the people that are there are all on the same they're all on the same page with us. But it's the ones that aren't there that we can't talk to. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. And I think posts like Amanda mentioned,
Yeah.
I mean, as leaders, we need to call that out, right? I mean, it's unacceptable behavior.
Yeah, that's one of the conversations that I've had with many people, is that, until the guys kind of police each other on a lot of their behavior, they're not necessarily going to hear it from whoever the minority is, whether it's a woman or a minority on race, based on race, whatever the minority is. They're not going to hear that person talk, because that person's just going to sound like they're whining or fussing, or they're not strong enough, or they're not, whatever their, background is, and whatever reasoning they have, they're going to have this. This is not coming out good. My brain's not functioning right enough to have this conversation right now. But basically, whenever we see something happen, or we experience something ourselves, as in my case as a woman, if I'm the one that's standing up saying, hey, you shouldn't treat me that way, or hey, why are you talking to me like that, or why is this happening and you're leaving me out of these conversations, if I say it, then I just sound like I'm whining, or I'm the B word, or whatever. Like, but if somebody else says, hey, if one of the other guys is like, hey, that was inappropriate, you should not have done that, or you should not have talked, policing each other is more
effective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. More effective than if I was to say something myself. And I've even had this conversation with my husband about things that have happened at different events that I've gone to, across the state and across the nation. And he's like, why didn't one of the other guys say something? Like, why didn't they just say, hey, that was not appropriate? Or, if that guy was acting out, why didn't they pull them out of the situation and take them somewhere else and say, hey, that was not cool what you did? I don't understand why they're not policing themselves. And that's a good point. And part of it is exactly that. You've got to stand up for what you see as wrong, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes I used to just delete the posts, delete and block, but now I've taken the stance is just to leave them up there. And so these things, these people can talk for themselves. You know what I mean? You're willing to post that on somebody's page. I'm going to leave it up there for the whole rest of the world to see into perpetuity until you delete it yourself, and that's the thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but we all have to start at least calling each other out when we see something wrong happen to somebody,
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we're basically a self-policing profession as it is. Like, we don't hesitate to call other surveyors out on what, we feel are mistakes that are being made. But when there's inappropriate behavior, it's crickets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't, and I think that's because we don't relate it to professionalism as much as we should, and that should be whether it's an inappropriate comment or a lack of industry care for a project. They're the same, and that lack of professionalism is bringing the whole thing down. And I
Yeah.
think us as leaders, like you said, Kent, if we put the same, if you put the same emphasis on those garbage comments versus someone doing a bad job, then I think we would elevate the profession together.
Yeah,
And
and if we've
that's how
all
we deal with it at the office. It's professionalism. And it doesn't matter,
Yep.
be a professional and treat everyone with respect
Mhm.
goes whether it's technical or personal.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I've seen that happen at too many companies where somebody was making them money, and so their behavior was just ignored, and it's
Yeah.
just it's still mind blowing that continues to happen. So
I
Yeah, that
think,
kind of
oh,
goes right
sorry.
to. No, I was gonna say, leads. If you want to chime in on this one, Sandra, what does hiring managers and operation leaders need to do differently right now if they want better retention later? So, kind of the same conversation that we're having right now, but I just want to kind of throw that
Yeah.
out there. So,
No, 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 of course. I think I was going to add, from an HR perspective, our firm is pretty large. We have a big
hmm
survey presence. I rarely hear anything from the the field crews, right? Or anyone out in the field. But the things that are happening are not okay. They're not
yeah,
acceptable. And if we were to get involved, then it definitely involves like more involvement from an HR legal standpoint, right? And
hmm
protecting our company brand and adhering to our company culture. So my suggestion for that would be for the leaders of the survey department to partner with your HR partners. How do we deliver this message to these employees? Not, I mean, if they need to be scared a little bit, that's fine. But I
yeah,
think it starts from a partnership standpoint, and letting them know, like, hey, this is not okay. This is not gonna fly anymore. And I think coming from a different perspective would be helpful.
yeah. And I think it goes back to Amanda's comment, which is, you know, my wife hates these words, but industry standard. What happens in the truck stays in the truck, or what happens in the field stays in the field, right?
True.
So, and it is something that has that particular stance has really never changed, unfortunately. Um, the field staff stay
Mhm.
very close knit together, and they're going to work out their issues the best they can between each other. But yeah, I don't know how we break that barrier. Anybody want to add to that one? What do you think, Sean? From a yeah, you're like I don't know, but from a hiring standpoint, what's a couple of things I guess that Alta's doing?
Um, uh, I would say we have been in the past too quick to hire based on just a referral, and we're doing more on checking references and talking to former supervisors, regardless of the position, to try to fish out some of those potential red flags. And not just because that person, and I'll say he because his cousin wants to get in the business. Oh, okay, well, sure, hire him, but we need to go through a more thorough process to see if we can't fish out the potential issues that come up that are against our culture. And we made that mistake in the last 5 years, where it's like, in retrospect, that was a bad hire, and we should have approached it like it was any other person and go through reference checks and make sure it's a culture fit.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake on our part. We just assumed, oh, yep, he's been in construction, it'll be fine, and it was a really bad hire. So now we have automatic rules. You have to check references. There has to be a former supervisor. You have to bring him into multiple times, meet multiple people, because we've gotten different answers. But for us, everyone has to say yes before we bring him on.
hmm
Yeah, and if I could add to that, Sean,
Nice.
I think we have an annual conversation with Brian Owens, right? Typically, it revolves around safety for the most part, but one of the things he has said a couple times, like let's say you're hiring somebody with 20 years of experience, right? That's great, but you're also hiring 20 years of habits, right? And many habits are very, very hard to break. So you got to be very, very careful when hiring like that.
I had friends who would actually tell me when they would screen people, they would actually go into those groups on Facebook to see what those people had said, and that it was
Yeah, and
actually an excellent screening tool.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we're known to do that. TA is everywhere. We stalk people for a living. So I know Connie had, talked about previously, like there's no consequences. There are, because we see it. And if we see that's the kind of character that you are, we're not going to want to bring you onto our company and have you in front of clients and getting work, because internet's forever. And I don't care what anyone says, it's always going to be there. Thank God when we grew up, we didn't have camera phones, right? So, but now in this day and age where everything's recorded, everything is permanent,
Mhm.
it's really easy for TA to get into those groups and just search that person and then be like, oh, see those red flags, and then there goes your offer that you potentially could have had.
I love that. We're getting close to the end. We'll try to start to wrap this up. Maybe two more questions here, but leadership responsibilities. Who is responsible for fostering diversity? Leadership or everyone? We've already kind of talked about this, but at this point, it's pretty much everyone. You know,
Yeah,
but
I think it goes back to leadership has to set the tone for it, right? But building that inclusive culture requires a commitment from the entire organization.
yeah,
But yeah, it's the lead, like it's like Kent said, the leadership tone of the setting this, the like I think I mentioned before, the old playbook was to go here to look for talent. Well, it's up to the leaders to open up those opportunities and say no to the HR or to the recruiters. Say no, I want you to go into other avenues because we need to see a different talent pool, because we've been playing off of the same playbook, and Trent will show you the graphs. It's going in the wrong
yeah,
direction.
yeah, exactly. It's not working. It's definitely not working. Yeah, that's awesome. Kind of lead up or follow up question to that one. What is the right way to address resistance inside of a firm? It's kind of a loaded one. Yeah. When you get those pushbacks, right? It kind of goes back with the conversation I just had. Oh, I'm too busy. I don't want to help, mentor that next young one coming up behind me type of thing, right? Like how do you address those kind of conversations? Nobody?
I think
That's a
maybe
tough one.
It
it
is
is
a
a
tough
tough
one.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think connecting inclusion to the overall success of the business can help potentially shift
Yeah.
perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah. Goes back to that product of environment, right? Like the leadership and what the leadership
Totally.
goals are is going
Yeah.
to be what the staff involved. Yep.
I
Yep.
think if you find a way to speak to them and have your have that difficult conversation of like this is how we're going, this is what we're doing, this is the overall goal of our company, and it's going to be better with more diverse people here. Having those conversations with people that are resisting, and if they don't like it, they can go. Honestly, if they're not going to get on board with what your company is trying to do and what your leadership is trying to do and what the profession is doing overall, then maybe they can find another place.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
to
I love
Anna's
that.
point, she mentioned that having that overall goal or vision for the company and it communicating that to everybody, and coming from the standpoint of, like Trent said, we all agree that we need more talented professionals in this business, and what we've done before hasn't worked. So our goal is to go into new areas and to diversify our workforce, and that's a company culture goal, and we're all going to be a part of it and setting the tone there, and then it can disseminate. But a lot of organizations don't do that, and they don't communicate and broadcast what their goals are for each year, and updating their mission vision statement, still the same one forever, and it's something
Yeah.
about clients and something about quality, but it's not in how we go about our business.
Yeah, I love that,
And it's nothing
Sean.
about staff. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
nothing about staff, right? Never, not about taking care of the staff. It's about the clients, right? So
And
it's the
And it's okay
I
to
liked
update,
what
right?
yeah.
I liked what Christy said. She said leadership doesn't have a title; it's a mindset. So
Yeah.
even if you're the big boys at the company, because that's how it tends to work. Even if that isn't happening, you can at least affect from your level down, right? You can affect what you touch. And so if you're a hiring
Mm-hmm.
manager, then you have to be conscious about that. If you're a project manager, then you have to, be conscious about the people that you work with and the tone that you use and the words that you use, because it doesn't take anything to do one he she instead of a them, and you've messed things up for a lot of people, right? So you have to start. It starts with the man in the mirror, right? But it starts here. And once you do a good enough job, your bosses see that your group is growing and that you're doing what you need to be doing, and then you can show that diversity does have a big impact on your ability to do your job. And once you show that you're successful in it, it works its way out. But I think you just have to start with yourself and go from there.
Yeah, that's good, Heather. And I think being well aware of your circle of influence is key. And then you have to have good self-awareness as well. But if you have those two things dialed in, you can make a big impact.
Absolutely.
And if anybody wants some of the best advice when it comes to that, would be Simon Sinek, right? Like anybody who follows him would get some great advice. So I'm going to follow up with two questions. One, what would the profession look like in 10 years if we don't change our ways? And this is a great one that Sean and Kent like to kind of put your vision glasses on. What's it going to look like in 10 years if we don't start to change the culture of the profession, right? So that's kind of for anybody at this point, but obviously we're gonna be short on staff, right? if we don't start changing our ways. Yeah.
There may not be a profession, honestly.
Yeah.
There might not be a profession, and that sounds pretty extreme, but I mean, there's talk of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Deregulation.
Deregulation. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. I mean, that comes up all the time. And as there's fewer and fewer surveyors, that conversation is going to become very real. And, I think surveyors stereotypically, don't pay much attention as something slowly becomes an issue until it's the last minute, right? And it's a massive issue that in many cases you can't turn back from. So we have to, again, self-awareness as a profession. It's so key if we're going to get this right 10 years from now.
Yep.
Well, I don't want to see it as I hate to say it, but the survey industry in general is starting to become one of those missed opportunity businesses where you missed the bandwagon on GIS. We missed, we're slow to adopt, and we just can't do that. We don't want to be the missed opportunity group because the available talent that's out there in STEM, and to be excited about this industry that doesn't necessarily need a traditional 4-year degree is huge, because there's not enough of them, and it will continue through the AI boom of the professionals that we need. So, what it would look like if we don't get it right is we'll just be continued to be cast aside as one of those things that it was nice, but now it's not really a thriving business anymore. And that's opposite of how we all see it.
Yeah. And I think, we've had some conversations as well, like we're collecting data so much faster in the field. And so that going back to that initial conversation of cross-training, like your field staff need to be able to, at some point, be able to come in and draft it, because otherwise they're going to have 20 hours worth of field work and, and be done with the work because we're collecting data so stinking fast now. What are they going to do with the other 20 hours in their week? And so that ability to cross-train is going to be very vital to the profession. And maybe that's where it requires less technicians, because they are taking care of field and office together, right? So there is that conversation. Like we still need field staff, but we also, we talk about, right, if it takes a day in the field, it's going to take 3 days in the office. And so one of those situations where it's going to be that. So, I have one other follow-up, unless somebody wants to add a little bit more to that. How about Sandra, from an HR's perspective or a company perspective, right? You guys are coming from a 3,000 person firm or something like that. Like, what if we don't change hiring practices within firms? What do you think from a long-term goal of a major company?
It's a very scary thought, honestly. I would hope that our internal teams would have a succession plan in place, and I would hope that those successors are outreaching into the programs that we talked about earlier, and how do we, broadcast it to a bigger pool of people.
Yeah.
Like, do we need to have more information sessions explaining what surveying is to a bigger pool? So it is a scary thought, but
yeah, it's the public outreach. That's where we're missing, let alone the high school outreach. It's the public outreach, and that's something that we're not doing. I will say,
I would love to have one of those. Like, do you know someone like you or in leadership, just do a quick 1 hour information session, on what surveying is, how do we get in the field, and promote it. Like, hey, if it's not you, then do you know someone that would like to attend versus looking to make a career change? It's more welcoming.
And that's something a few states do, but I know somebody like Minnesota does a really good job of. They have one called Meet at the Corner, and they do community outreach, and it's like meet at a